Mr. Davies.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Leetold, you're a lawyer and you seem to have, in your brief, covered very comprehensively a number of what you say are the rights that were violated. What is your understanding of the right of a Canadian citizen to be informed of the charges against them after being arrested? When must that happen?
Well, it's not only a citizen of Canada, it's anyone in Canada. The Charter would apply. Section 10A of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms would indicate that one is to be advised of the reasons of one's detention or arrest essentially immediately upon that transpiring. There's a line of cases that would support that. It's distinct, in effect, from the right to counsel, which is to be provided without delay. The right to know the reasons for one's detention or arrest is framed positively and should happen almost instantaneously upon that crystallizing.
Okay, well, you anticipated my next question, which is, under Canadian law, what's your understanding of when a Canadian citizen who's arrested must be given the right to access counsel? And I think you've answered that without delay.
That's correct.
You had some 25 legal advisors, I presume lawyers, that were retained during the course of the G20 process. I just wanted to know, did you hear reports of people who had either of those or both of those rights offended? And if so, can you give us an idea of what the extent of that violation was?
Well, as we detail in our submission to this committee, in fact, what we are concerned about is what appeared to be a systemic violation of both 10A and 10B rights under the Charter. Just to clarify, again, those rights apply to anyone regardless of citizenship who's in Canada, but further, with respect to the issue of retaining counsel, we actually hadn't retained counsel. We'd received volunteer commitments from people to act in bail hearing settings. In any event, what we saw was people who were held at the Prisoner Processing Centre were not able to contact counsel for in some cases not at all, and in some cases there were extensive delays. And these were reported by the people who were responding to phone calls. The ones that did come in, people were saying, I've been held in excess of a day in some cases, and others who never really knew why they were detained or arrested. Okay. People who, Francophones especially, who were being released saying, I never really understood what's happened for the last 36, 48 hours.
Okay.
And to me, and I think to everyone living in Canada, that should be shocking.
Now, I want to turn to you, Mr. Adams. You're an experienced police officer. What is your understanding, and what are your officers in the Peel Regional Police Force, what are they told about their obligation after arresting someone to inform them of the reasons for arrest? When would a Peel Regional officer, what would his training tell him or her they need to make that information known to the person they're arresting?
Sir, I believe he articulated that perfectly. Our officers are taught that right at the Ontario Police College from day one of their training. Okay.
And similarly, your officers would also be told that they had to inform someone upon arrest that they had the right to retain and instruct counsel without undue delay. Is that what your officers would tell someone? Sir, you're probably aware that there were dozens and dozens, maybe even hundreds, I'm not sure of the number, of people who alleged during the G20 process that they were arrested, not told the reasons why they were arrested, and were not told that they had a right to contact a lawyer for some time. Did you hear those allegations as well, sir?
Via what I've heard in regards to this committee and the media, yes.
Okay. Have there been any complaints that any of your officers may have violated those rights, allegations that they had?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Sir, Mr. Adams, on what grounds is it your understanding that police officers are legally entitled to stop, question, and search an individual in a public place?
Our officers understand, as far as an individual's rights, they're well aware what their rights are under the Charter. Mm-hmm. And our officers, once again, sort of train that right from the first day of Ontario Police College. So
you'd agree with me that officers do not have an unconditional right to stop someone in a public place?
No, sir.
Detain them? Okay. Now, you heard the question from Mr. Leetold. I want to pose that question to you on his behalf. What were frontline officers told at the Peel Regional officers of the legal limits of their powers to stop and search people in the G20?
That didn't change from what their normal daily duties were, sir.
Okay. And I presume they would have been instructed that they can only stop and detain someone and search them if they have lawful or reasonable grounds, whatever those may be under the
That's part
Charter.
of their training, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Mr. Leetold, you also stated, I think, that protesters who were targeted simply for having legal support phone numbers on their person. Is that correct?
That's reports that we've received. Our submission to this committee is a synthesis of legal observer reports and reports received by members of our committee.
Okay. Back to you, Mr. Adams. Does the Peel Regional Police engage in any activities to educate the public about their rights and responsibilities when dealing with law enforcement individuals?
Do we educate?
Do you have any activities that sort of educate the public community at large about that?
As far as educating the public, as far as the Dec.1, we had a community relations group in relation to the summits, but as far as what their rights are,
that wouldn't be part of what you do.
Not as a general program, no. When we deal with them, they're dealt with professionally and with courteous, and as far as their rights. And
okay. Now, you would agree with me that simply possessing a document that just outlines your constitutional rights or your legal rights would not be a ground upon which a police officer would make any negative assumption or arrest that person. Would you agree with me?
Can you reword that for a second?
Yeah, a person just simply having a constitutional document on them that says know their rights card would not be a reason for any officer in your detachment to make any negative assumption about that person, would it?
No, sir.
Okay. By the way, is it a requirement of your force, sir, that Peel Regional Police officers are required to display their name and badge numbers when they're dealing with the public?
With our organizations, it's your epaulets. So you find up here on your shoulders. And they have to have their epaulets on their most outer gear. So in the wintertime, it'd be on your winter parka. In the summertime, if you're just wearing a shirt, it'd be on your shirt.
And that's name and badge number?
That's just your badge number.
Okay. And
as a senior officer, we have name tags, but our constables have their badge number.
And I take it, would it be a violation of your department policy if an officer were to cover that up when they're out dealing with the public?
Yes, it is. Procedure policies clearly indicate you do wear your epaulets.
That would be improper? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to just explore quickly the concept of preventative arrest, Mr. Adams. A lot of people, it seems, were arrested by police not for what they've done, not even for any evidentiary basis, but as a preventative measure for what a mere suspicion was that they might do. Do you have any comment to this committee about that practice by police? Is it something your officers endorse?
Are we talking about the breach of the peace?
Preventive arrest.
If we're talking about the breach of the peace?
Would you agree with me there would have to be an evidentiary basis before such an arrest would be made?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davies.